to Redefine Parenting. I'm your host, Vinu Keller, and I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and Her Network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Today, we are here with one of my dear friends, mentor, peer, however you want to say it. And we are going to talk about how we empower our kids to be leaders. I used to say, how do I create a leader? And I remember Felix saying, well, your kid's already a leader, and we have to find these gifts in them and their greatness and all these great things about them. And it was so true. And being a mom of six, sometimes I probably didn't do it the best way possible. I did it the way I knew how in the earlier days. And now with all the trainings and all the experiences, I've been able to lead my kids through their own greatness versus trying to put my greatness onto them. So I want to introduce my friend Felix, because I know we're going to have a lot to say because we both like to talk. So I want to give us as much time. So, I met Felix probably, almost 15 years ago, I guess now. Gosh, it's a long time. And when I met Felix, one of the realms that I met him in is a youth camp that he helps facilitate through a foundation. And it is all about empowering our youth. And when I saw Felix on stage and we do these great board breaks and he takes them through these belief busting, he has this way of seeing what's right in our kids, seeing the strengths in our kids versus seeing what's wrong with them. And I would notice how Felix would answer when these kids would share about like the things that they weren't. And he would just shift it so gently with so much love and compassion for these kids to really figure out like, what that's actually in me. And he was able to condition this in these kids as they shared. And it was in that moment where I was like, wow, this man has a beautiful gift. And so I felt who better to bring onto this show to really help us see as parents how we could already see the leader in our kids and how we can empower that. So without further ado, Felix, thank you so much for joining us on Redefine Parenting. If you want to just tell us a little bit about you and how you really got into, what you do.
Sure. I'm a parent of a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. They are amazing human beings. I have had the opportunity what I do now is that when I work with companies, I do coaching, but I also, our goal is to ensure that they get to elite teamwork and elite leadership, whatever it looks like for them. And so taking those principles, we work with the youth and we help them define themselves as leaders, help them find their greatness, their passions. And we want to make sure that all you out there as parents, if you can take anything away from what Vino and I are going to talk about, because Vino, by the way, as you guys know, Vino is just incredible in this area. And when she said mentor, she's a mentor of mine, right? And so we go back and forth. There's a lot of learnings that we can learn from both because Vino has some incredible experience working directly with parents and kids together. So for me, though, it falls into I think we talked a little bit about this, Vino. It falls into three real categories of what we can do better as parents. Because there's no manual for us, right? When we are like looking to get to help our whole goal is to help our kids be the best they can be. And sometimes we get in our own way to make that happen. And so, and it happens in companies because it is our kids, it is even more, it's so much closer to us emotionally.
Right.
That we have to be really, really aware of how we are actually leading them. Yeah. So thank you, Avina. It's an awesome opportunity to talk to people here about this, for sure.
And it's interesting when you say this because, I have the twins that are 10, which you know very well. And we were just talking about this today about, practicing, if you would. Mm-hmm. And my daughter, Sage, she loves to sing. We have invested a lot of time and resources into getting her singing lessons for about a year now. And it was interesting because the other day, her twin brother, Sam, comes in and he says, oh, you know what? I really do think Sage is going to make it on America's Got Talent because that's like her goal. The Voice, America's Got Talent. And I was
Right.
kind of shocked because her twin brother normally doesn't have a compliment for her, and especially with her singing. And I said, "Really? So you actually do like her singing?" And he says, "I mean, it's improved a lot." He's like, "But does she have to do it all the time?" And because she does it all the time. And I said, "You know what, Samuel? When you are passionate about something in your life,
Mhm.
you're going to do it all the time because it lights you up. And the more you do it, the better you get." I said, "Look, a month ago, you were not saying your sister can make it on America's Got Talent. A month later, you're saying, hey, she could do it." And you see her doing it, which is so beautiful that you can align with her vision.
Yes.
And so we started talking about that today in the car because she started singing again. And so I reminded him about that. And I said, and she said, "Well, Samuel, you have your passion of soccer." And I explained to both the twins, I said, "And this is why your dad and I will invest our time, our
Mhm.
money, and our support in helping you guys to achieve your passion." And it really started, and it was a great way to, I'm like, wow, like we're really going to be talking about this today, actually, because that's them owning what they want to be great in, what they are great in, and that there's another level of greatness in it and
Yeah.
taking leadership in that.
And so it's incredibly important that, I mean, Vina, that's amazing. So it's incredibly important as parents that we are actually aware of what they're passionate about and
Right.
not putting locks on them, right? We're not holding them back from the things that they love doing. It's better to take something like, so an example of this is like when Max was 4, he found out about the Titanic. I had no idea, like we had no idea that he was really excited about, all of a sudden everything was about the Titanic, the Lego set, National Geographic shows. His grandparents bought him this really big book with all these pictures, all these words in it, and he's going through this book like every day going, okay, looking at the pictures, and he's pointing at the words on the page going, what does this say, what is this word, what is this word? He literally taught himself how to read because he was so excited about the Titanic. And
Wow.
it's when we have an opportunity, because a lot of the times we're so busy as parents, right? We've got work, we've got we got to get them to school the next day. We're helping them study, or we're making food. It's like telling them to go to bed, right? Brush your teeth. And it's like all these things that we're forcing. Like we got to make sure that happens. Sometimes we forget to really pay attention to what they love.
Mm,
It's the things that they love, and think about it this way: it's also the things that you love. And I like to use it as what's your superhero power, right?
mhm.
And you have many. We all have many, and we need to recognize what they are because we find joy, we find just like fun, we find that we add tons of value. These are the moments in our lives that it's no longer work. It just we just do it with you would do it for free and you do it over and over again until you die, right? This is just who we are. And so if you, as soon as you find that in your child, make sure that you encourage it. And in fact, when you bring up AGT, like one of my favorites is it was the autistic singer that he's blind, Cody Lee, right? So he was on AGT and he won that year. And you watch his mom because she found out like so this he was blind and an autistic, right? And so probably in the beginning of his childhood, it was like, what do we do? She found his passion and she found his love, and it's in music. And if you get a chance to watch that, like you go on YouTube and watch his auditions and watch him through the competition, not only do you see how amazing he is, she is an inspiration of what we should be as parents.
Wow.
Find the greatness in your child. There, it's everywhere. Sometimes we forget to look for it. Find it. It's already there. You already, in fact, I'll say this: you already know what it is.
Right.
You already know what it is, and it's
Right.
our job to encourage. For
And I
sure.
would also, so, for those listeners, if you have something to write with, I would encourage you to do this. Just take a second as we're talking and think about, write down, what are your kids' gifts? What are the things that you see in your child? It's repetitive things. It's like I used to get so irritated when I'm doing the dishes and the kids are like, I want to do them, I want to do them. Because, like you said, as a parent, like I am rushed, I am tunnel vision. I got to get this breakfast stuff done so I can get them to school or whatnot and get my day going. And yet, and I'm like, this is not the time. This is not the time. And you know what? I miss those opportunities because that was the time. Even if I could have gave one dish, right? Because now, as they are older, It's now a chore to them. And what would have happened if, when they're asking through curiosity, can I do that? Can I push the vacuum? Can I take the broom and do it? What if we would have just let them in those moments? Could it have become something that they not only got to do and felt proud of themselves, but they got to now contribute and see they are a leader? Like I tell my kids, be a leader in your own life. That means look at your surroundings. What can you do before I even, ask you? Because leaders, anticipate. They anticipate what they need to do. And my kids are, 10, so they're getting older. And so we're using these bigger words. But even back then, I could have listed so many things that, again, I was so busy, I didn't even take knowledge of. What did I miss out on seeing at a younger age? And it's not too late, by the way.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm saying just take a second and think about what are some of the gifts that your children have right now. Are they, open? Are they kind? Are they respectful? Like these are characteristics. Felix, what are some of the other characteristics? So if these parents are like, well, I don't know what they do. They go to school and they like to talk a lot. Like what else could these parents be looking for if they're not sure what a gift or a trait looks like?
Yeah. So Vinu, you just hit it on the head. It's like especially for the kids who like to talk, we need to listen.
Yes.
And that's really all it is that you listen and take those. Like, we all are busy. There's two things I think that are really important. One is to listen and watch.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say things on how they want to behave or how they want things to be. You want to watch their behaviors, right? And as you know, when you go and work with families and stuff like that, there's a lot of things they say, and it doesn't come in anywhere in terms of the behavior that they and you also need to understand what behaviors you've gotten from your parents and things that I can hear my dad still talking in my ears about like don't waste, right? And so is that coming through? Like, am I automatically teaching my kids this? Am I sitting there telling them to finish their plates, right? Even simple things like that we've just been conditioned all of our lives when we were young. Are those really what we should be conditioning into our kids?
Right.
And so you said, like Vinu, like just like you said, no matter how busy we are, we have to take this time, because the time you take now and you encourage the behaviors that you want, you discourage the behaviors that you don't want. We just have to make sure we're doing the right encouragement and the right kind of discouragement, and in a way that they can take it. So how do you understand? Like, watch and listen, right? Watch what they do, listen to what they're saying about what they really want, and as leaders, as you are leaders, guide them to what they love. A lot of parents complain about how much their kids are playing Minecraft and stuff like that, right? And so what you notice, they do it just like that. Why are they doing it? Then the next question is, why are they doing it? And to have a conversation with them, ask them. And
Right.
so for Max, he's connecting with friends, especially through COVID, right? When they couldn't see anybody, they were connecting with friends. He's got his Discord server running so he can have fun and play. He can create, he can do things. So, okay, so if Minecraft is a way to do it, what are other areas that are similar to Minecraft that I can have him learn? And part of that is, just he now programs in Python, he programs in Java, so we just encourage him to take some of that. So not fight it, right? Yes, it's a little bit, might be too much, but just to take that and just kind of bring it to another area where he can grow and prosper and grow in his mind. Yeah. Sorry.
That I'm just going to say that brings up a great point is, in my 6-week parenting course that I have online called Crack the Code to Parenting, on I think it's like week 3 or week 4, it's love their weaknesses into their strengths. So I'm just going to use Max as an example. So if one of his weaknesses, if you would, is putting a lot of time into Minecraft and just putting all that time, parents look at that as a weakness. Like, how do I get my kids off the video games, right? They're always in video games. But what I hear you saying that you and Sam did is you guided that weakness, if you would, into his strength, which
Right.
is now like, because I know, like I said, it's crazy how much Max is like into coding and programming and all this stuff. And because you guys found the love of what he was doing, which again could be a weakness, how many hours, but yet you guided it into a strength of his. And now look what he's doing, even at the age of 12, right? That a lot of us can't even fathom doing. And that is so important. It's like, look at the things that make you irritated about your kids. What is it? Like with me, my daughter is constantly asking questions, asking questions. Well, when I was a little girl, I used to get in trouble all the time because I would ask questions all the time. The curiosity. But I never saw it as curiosity. I always saw it as annoying, attention
Right.
seeking, all the negative parts about asking questions.
Right.
And so going back to what you're just saying is, so am I going to carry that on and say, stop asking questions, stop asking questions? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I admit it. Yes, that's exactly what I did until I started to take a second and say, what is it that she's really after? Number
Hmm.
one, she does want to connect. We can say, oh, she wants attention, or we can say, oh, she really wants to connect. So, how can I make time to connect with her more? The
Right.
other thing is that when she's asking questions where she already knows the answer to, and those are probably going to be, honestly, the most irritating questions. However, what I've done with her now, instead of saying, stop asking that, that's a ridiculous question, because I also heard that, is Sage, is that a question that you really want to know the answer because you don't know? Or is that a question because you want to take time to have a conversation and you're not sure how to start it?
Mm.
So I allow her curiosity, I guide it into a different area so it's not a weakness. Well, just in 3 weeks, guess what happened? She stopped asking those questions and she catches herself and says, oh, wait, I already know the answer. And I really just want to know this, or I'm just kind of saying it out loud. I said, you know what? I'm so proud of you for catching that. And look, now we can have a conversation about it because you were honest and now I want to have that conversation and I'm not seeing her as irritating. So it
Right.
also shifts that trigger or that charge that we get as parents to say, okay, it's not as irritating if we see it through a different light and we don't see it as our weakness, we can actually guide it to the strength.
Yeah, so there's two major points that I love about what you just said. One is that we have to start with ourselves.
Mm,
We have to start with ourselves first because you took the pause. You said, you know what, I need to, I want to not be irritated here. So how can I shift myself first, right? So parents, if you're listening to this, you start with yourself. It's not them, it's us.
100%.
It's us, right? We have to start with ourselves first. And the second thing that was beautiful is that you sometimes every human is going to be different in terms of how they process. So, for your daughter, it sounds like for Sage, it sounds like she likes to process externally
Yep.
auditory, right? So she wants to say things out so she can hear it. And it may be a rhetorical question or she needs to have somebody else say it at first and then she can hear it and then she can process it, right? And so that's just the way. And if you have anybody around you, especially like in the workforce, that constantly loves to talk about stuff, it's because that's part of their process. They need to hear it externally auditory. Some of us listen to ourselves internally auditory. Some people need to see it externally on a piece of paper in front of them. Some people have their own little whiteboard inside their head that they're looking at all the time, right? And so you taught her to externally listen. Oh, I have the answer, and you gave her the confidence, and you taught her that you conditioned her so that you conditioned the behavior of her being able to answer her own question. And so it works beautifully. So you empowered her, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's beautiful.
And also, what I noticed also, and again, this is how we start to notice what it is that our kids need in that moment or want. And she's also seeking validation because,
Mm,
as you stated, I'm not going to go into meta programs here, but she's externally referenced. So she needs external references to say, yes, I did it right. Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's the answer. And so we start to learn so much about our children if we take the time instead of getting annoyed with all the things that annoy us to say, what are they really seeking? And all of a sudden we start to see those gifts. We start to see the gifts inside of them, and it's interesting because my listeners that are here, Felix is actually married to Samantha Lynn, who was on my show a few weeks ago talking about homeschooling. And it was funny because when you were going through the VAC, the visual auditory kinesthetic, so did Sam when it comes to learning. So I was like, well, you could tell that they're married. You could tell they're on the same page, which is also a great thing. So now that we've figured out their gifts, now what do we do? What's the next step?
the next step is to we have to prepare them that everything that we do in life, some things are easy, some things are hard, right? We need to create resilience and we need to encourage them that here's the biggest one, right? So a lot of parents are when we fail or quote unquote fail, there is a huge repercussion in how we deal with it.
Right.
And for a lot of people and a lot of parents that have brought them up, failure, number one, not an option, right? Or when they fail, there is massive pain. I mean, my brother was a straight A, and the best way to explain this, my brother was a straight A student for, his whole life. I mean, guy's brilliant, national merit scholar. And there was a lot of pressure. And one class in high school, I think he brought home a D one time. And my parents went berserk, right? I mean, they went and it was not a good time to be around the house at that time because they were screaming, they were shouting. My brother would never hurt anybody like that, but he actually had a machete and he's chopping the door, he's chopping the chair just to get all this anger out of him without taking it out on anybody else. He punched holes in the walls and things like that. And so for the longest time, this kept going. And he had a scholarship to any school that he wanted to go to through the national merit. He ended up getting into UCLA, and then within the first year, he failed out.
Mm.
And it was a class, or he wanted to be an engineer because my dad was an engineer. And I mean, it went berserk. I mean, it was now that I have the tools that I have now, it's really interesting to look back. And the real challenge, like one of the biggest challenges, in the middle of all this, my dad died. Mm-hmm. And my brother never had closure at that time. He blamed God. For the next 10 years of his life, he was lost. I mean, he just went from menial job to menial job, just kind of keeping it together. All this time, he's still an amazing human being, right? It just in this part of his life, he never had he didn't have a way to get that closure, and he just realized how terrible the relationship was at that time. All because my dad. I mean, I think my brother actually subconsciously may have just tested my parents to see how they would react. If he because all the pressure they had put on him, and he just decided that one day he was going to fail a class. I mean, he could have passed it. So the way they reacted, how are we reacting to our children as they are succeeding or failing or quote unquote failing in things in life right now? Right. Who are we being in that moment? Are we encouraging them to be resilient, step up, do it again, be stronger? Or are we some parents are screaming at their kids.
Right.
Who are we being? And that's a really important piece of this.
I love that. And I also, what shows up for me is the empowering our kids to be who they want. And, when you say, quote, unquote, failing, it's how do we set them up to win? How are we setting our kids up to win? And I think that is part of being resilient, that, you could fall down 10 times as long as you're getting up 10 times. And what does that look like to them? And one of the things that I support my clients and the parents I work with is how are you defining that grade versus how is your kid defining that grade?
Right.
And we as parents have this outcome of, oh, they have to get good grades. They have to pass. For what though? What's our outcome in expecting our kids to do the work and pass and have good grades? Is it our measurement tool if we're a good parent? Is it our, if they're not making good grades, then they're not going to get into college. And if they don't get to college, I failed as a parent. Right. What definition are we giving the work that our kids do? The other thing is that, and I explained this on another show once before. It's like, you have two teams and, your team is losing and you watch and say you're playing on that team and your team is losing. What happens that second half is amazing. And it's really a metaphor of what happens in life. You either have the kids that are like, okay, we gave them the first half, watch me roar now, watch me kick butt. And they come back and it's like, where did this team come from? What woke them up? It was, we were just getting warmed up attitude. And then you have those kids that you watch, and I see this more times than not, that give up. They give up that last half. They're like, we've already lost. What's the point?
Yeah.
Of any more energy?
And their parents are screaming at them, right? Some of these parents are on the sidelines, they're screaming at their own kids. They're screaming. There was one, I did a lot of coaching for ice hockey. And I remember there was this one parent that used to sit up in the highest point in the stands by himself. And his kid was a really good player. Every game, his kid left the game in tears. Because every moment on that ice, if he did, like he took a shot and he didn't score, his parent would actually just turn around and put his back to him up in the
Right.
stands. It's like, seriously?
Right.
And his kid would be crying on the bench. It's like nothing was ever good enough for his dad. And so he was never enough. He was taught, I'm never enough.
Right. And that's where these beliefs come in our kids. I mean, they really do. I can't tell you. And this is one of the things that I love about the camp that you and I have the privilege of working at, is that when they come in with, I'm not enough, my parents don't think this of me, or I'm not, I fail at this and I'm not the quarterback that my dad wanted me to be. And when they leave after those 5 days, it's like, I may not be the quarterback, but I am this person. And we help them find their own strengths to overcome what they're receiving from the parents, to be their own, their own raving fan, if you would. And I'm going to tell you, like, I had this client that I was talking to, and the son got into some type of military school, and it was going to help this boy get into the Ivy colleges, to play, oh gosh, what's that? Lacrosse. I was like, what's that game called? Lacrosse. We didn't have that back in the day when I was growing up. Sorry. And the son's like, this is not what I wanted. Like, this military school is not for me. I don't even like lacrosse anymore. It took away his dreams, because it was more about military, following directions, academics, and then lacrosse was secondhand. Where at his regular high school, it was lacrosse was number one and everything else came secondary. So the kid decided on his own, because he was 18, that he was going to go back to public school. I don't care. And the dad kicked him out of the house.
Wow.
The dad's like, if you're leaving military school, you're not staying in this house. Good luck doing what you want to do. Go ahead and do that. Well, of course, I get on a call with both of them. The good news is the dad let the son move back in. And he said, but I won't come to any of your games. If you think you're going to see me in the stand, I will not be there. Mm-hmm. And you can see how that crushed the kid. Honestly, I think that kid rather have stayed, moved out, if his dad would have showed up to the games, versus moving back in and his dad not showing up to the games.
Yeah.
And that's how much influence us parents have on these kids, because they are born with us being their raving fan. And to take that away because of other circumstances is what crushes these kids. And it takes away that worth in them. And it takes away that potential of being that leader, because we're no longer seeing them for their greatness. We're seeing them in the lack of what we wanted to be their greatness.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a guy in North Carolina, as you know, they've come out and worked with gang leaders over in Wilmington. And there's a super entrepreneur out there. His name is George Taylor. And about 5 years ago, he decided, like, there was a drive-by shooting of, I think it was a 15 or 16-year-old kid was killed about 4 blocks away from his office. And he said, enough is enough. And so here is a middle-aged white guy wanting to do something to, like, figure out what's going on with these gang leaders in Wilmington, North Carolina. And so he went to the DA, said, how can I get involved? DA's laughing at him. What are you going to do? Right. And so his superhero power is that he is unbelievably persistent. That's why he's amazing as an entrepreneur. And then finally the DA goes, okay, go talk to the detectives in the police force. They laughed at him. What are you going to do? And he's persistent, right? He's using his superhero power, and he gets in touch with all 3 of the gang leaders, the Bloods, the Crips, and the Gangster Disciples, the GDs. He brings them all together. And over a year, he gets to learn about, like, what they're, like, who they are, like, what is really the challenge here. And he finds out that gangs are actually more social clubs than they are, like, criminal enterprises, and that they're actually looking to support each other. The biggest challenge was an economic challenge. They just didn't have opportunity. And so George goes, I have another superpower. I solve economic challenges. I can actually get businesses going. And so he brings them all into a boardroom. These are people that have beefs with each other, and then I get in there, and I had no idea what to expect. And here's these guys, like with, they got track ears on them because they're on parole still, and they need to know where they are. And here they are all in a boardroom, and we have pictures of all this, which is amazing. And what he's done there in the last 5 years, and you can see it now, it's called True Colors, TRU, Truth, Responsibility, Unity. The violence in Wilmington, North Carolina gang violence has dropped over 80%. And they are bringing more and more of the game. So they created a brewery. They believe that with a conversation, understanding each other, things can change. And so now you see all these guys working to shoulder. And when I go into companies, it's like I have this reference. There's a guy named Steve and a guy named Dune. These are two of the gang leaders. And Steve killed Dune's best friend. It was in self-defense, but he still killed his best. These guys stand next to each other, working with each other every day. More importantly, they can actually do Ho'oponopono, which is they can look each other right in the eye and say, "Thank you, I love you." Mm-hmm. Now, we may not ever have that experience of having like killed one of our friends or somebody else killing one of our friends and standing next to that person and forgiving them and saying, "Thank you, I love you." What I did learn, though, is that every kid needs somebody to believe in them.
Yes, 100%. 100%. And we can have so many excuses in the world. Like, oh, I came up from a split home. I can say, oh, I was raised, in America, the first generation. So my Indian family didn't understand, or, my father died when I was 15. It doesn't matter what the excuse is, as long as we stand by our kids, even as a single parent. I was a single parent for 9 years. And identifying what these strengths are in our kids and believing in them. That's what this is. This guy in Wilmington believed he could do something, and he was persistent because that's his gift. A lot of our kids, you think about those kids that are like, mom, 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 mom. I feel like sometimes my kids are like Stewie on that.
Family Guy, right?
I'm like, oh, but you know what? They're determined to get their outcome.
Yes.
They will do whatever it takes. If that didn't get my attention, they're going to try something different. And if that didn't work, they're going to try something different. And what I'm noticing is they are also persistent. They are also determined. And when they really want something, they know how to go after and get it. So how are we supporting this in our own children? How are you seeing a pattern like Felix and I have been talking, awareness, resilience, and now it's like I going into like what's their superpower, what's their most of our kids anyway, I would say, everyone has somebody they look up to. They have a superhero. And I know this is like one of your main areas of strengths, and that we even do this as a what's it called, one of those introduction things, like icebreakers. I was like, icebreakers. And so, tell me how you got into that. How did you realize that this is one of those missing links in helping kids to really empower their leadership?
So I actually had a chance to watch one of my mentors do work with the Golden State Warriors. And this was like such the coolest experience. I could be a fly on the wall to watch this happen. And this is in 2018. And to see him work with them, and they were having challenges. Teams were beating them, and so these are obviously elite athletes, elite teamwork here. And the coach brought him in to say, "Hey, look, what can you do for the guys to help them kind of come back together a little bit tighter?" And it was really fascinating. It was, first off, what do you bring to your team? And so think about this as a parent right now. Like, and if you consciously haven't thought about this, think about it right now. What do you bring to your kids? What is your joy? What is your love? Like, what do you want to share with them? What do you want them to remember? Because tomorrow's not promised to us, just like my dad. And I'm certain my dad would not have wanted, if he had known that he was going to pass away just over a weekend and not have the opportunity to close that loop with my brother, I think he would have done things differently. So what do we bring? And so he had each one of the players step up. So Steph Curry was, I loved to take the big shot, right? And the whole team's laughing because, Steph is the clown he's the joker of the group. And they all know that he loved to sink the big shot, and he's one of the best that's ever lived doing that. And so then he said, hey, and then it was asked, what is the name of that person? And he said, I'm the baby-faced assassin. And then make a move, and he does a shimmy. And so if anybody's watched basketball and you've watched the Golden State Warriors play, you've watched stuff, that's it. And the whole room is laughing. They're all like, it took that energy to get them all going. Mm-hmm. And then they go one by one by one by one until the very end. And here's Kevin Durant, right? He's the last guy to go. And they're all, and he's kind of shy and reluctant. This is one of the best players in the world. He's kind of shy and reluctant about sharing these. He finally opened up. He said, look, when I first came to this team, I didn't, I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. I didn't want to I just didn't want to out overshadow anybody or mess with anybody. And they're like, this is like one of the best players in the world saying this in an elite team. And then they were begging him to show up. And so Kevin Durant, I don't remember. I remember his name. He called himself Sniper, and he did his move, and then he said he loves hitting big shots too, right? And the next 5 games after that, I think he scored like 40 or 50 points. It was, if you can look back, it's like around February 2018, and he just put the team, like Steph Curry was injured, he put the team on his shoulders and he just went, right? He was inspired.
Wow.
He was inspired by what he could do for everybody else. He stopped talking all those stories. So as parents, what is the story that's holding us back? Why are you not able, willing to take that next step to encourage?
Right.
Why are we living the programming of our past? And if you watch them, they did end up winning the title that year. If you watch them through the playoffs, you can see them calling each other. They're calling each other's names. They're laughing. They found a way to break their own states. And now you could see them as they just went on and won the title that year. And maybe that's something you can do with your kids.
Right.
Maybe that's something you can find out where, what do they love? Ask them those questions and find a superhero name, make a move, right? And do it with them and enjoy it. Yeah. do the Steph Curry shimmy, right? Or find whatever moves them. Give them as Vinu knows, I have a name. My name is Beast Mode. I love that name. And so if somebody says to me, Beast, it's in our Slack channels too, right? In our Slack channels that we share, it's like people know, it's like if I see it or they say it, hey, Beast Mode, we need you. I'm there, right? I'm bringing it. I'm coming.
Right.
So just know that that's all inside of all of us.
Right. And what I love about that, it's showing your kids that they already have it in them as well.
Yeah.
And that they don't have to establish it all over again. Like they already have that in them. And who are they going to show up as? And, it's interesting because I've been taking these classes, these courses, and I had to get a straw through a potato. Now I have broken boards. I have walked on fire. But to get a straw to a potato is a whole nother level. And so I was like doing it. And I was just stabbing at it. And, the whole idea of it is hanging on to your end result. What's the end result you want? Yes. I want the straw through the potato. But the problem is that it's kind of like slapping at the board, right? We're slapping at the problem. Right. It's like you're just jabbing at the problem. You're not seeing the end result. What are you going to get when that straw comes through that potato? So my son, Sam, says, oh, I can do it, in his little cocky self. And he comes in and he's not doing it. And he's stabbing at it. And it's interesting because the stories that we tell ourselves are going to show up when we do things like this. Like even like breaking a board. And I know that's your thing, is getting people to break boards. And the same thing happened. And it's like, I remember getting the straw through half the potato and I'm like shoving it in and the straw's breaking. And it's like, all of a sudden I got this story in my head going, you can't, push your way through life. You can't push your way through the end result. You just got to know the end result. So the next day, my son says, can I try again? And I'm like, sure, go ahead. And I said, but before you do, I want you to hold that potato. And before you put the straw in, I want you to tell me, what do you see at the end? What's the end result? He's like, I see that straw at the other end. I said, so turn the potato around and see it. Like visualize that straw already through it. Like it's already through it. And then turn it over again. And then when you're ready, it's going through, like it's already through. And he did it. And we celebrated like crazy. And then he's like, can I do it again? And I'm like, you think you could do it again? And he's like, yeah. So I video it this time. And you see him closing his eyes, holding the potato. And then all of a sudden he just does it. And you hear me go, because I was shocked that he did it. And we just celebrated again. And I said, Samuel, how did that feel? And he's like, oh gosh, Mom, it was so great because I couldn't do it. And I was getting mad. I was getting frustrated. I wanted to just throw the potato. These are also patterns that we create in our life. That's what happens when he's at school and this math problem is tough for him and he can't do it. It doesn't matter how much instruction he gets. And I said to him, what if you started to focus on the end result in your math? What if you just said, what's my end result at this math? You know, is it really about getting the A, or is it really about understanding the process of this problem? What is it that you really want? I said, when you're on the soccer field, what's your end result?
Yeah.
Because he's learning that it's not, his end result is not to get the goal, it's teamwork. Teamwork is his end result. It's seeing your other players, giving them the opportunity if they're open to pass the ball. And I love his coaching strategy, his coach's coaching strategy. It's all about scanning. What do you see? Who is open? Because I was like, what's your end result? It's getting the goal. And he says, no, mom, my end result is teamwork. I said, wow, right? Because again, we take and we project what we think their end result needs to be instead of listening to what their end result is.
Right.
And now being able to take what I have learned, transfer it over to my son. We were going through some of his weekly work. And he's like, I don't like these grades. I said, let me ask you a question. We took one by one. I said, what was your end result? He's like, I had to pass it. I said, you had to pass it for what? Because I needed to get a good grade. I said, was that your end result? And he's like, oh, I was just focused on finishing. I said, your end result wasn't getting understanding and doing, it was finishing. And guess what? You met your end result. You just didn't get the grade you wanted.
Right.
So these are all lessons. And again, we can use the same thing with like the board break, right? It's like writing down and knowing what belief we need to break through. And how many times we see these kids just slapping that board instead of really knowing what's that end result that they're really going for.
Yeah, and so guiding them through that process is all about creating the meaning, right? And we have very little, like, so ultimately when we go through that little process, we have very little challenge of our young leaders going through it. And that's actually a really interesting thing that you said. There's like inside of those, like knowing that he loves teamwork, there is all these other things that can happen. It's like, how do you know where your child can be their best? It's like, I recognize, like when I used to work out a ton, I always had somebody with me. I love going to play hockey because it's all around, my friends, and I will drop anything at a dime to go do it. And because it's around, I chose being a goalie because I wanted to be a linchpin, right? If I have a bad day, everybody has a bad day. But if I have a great day, everybody has a great day, right? So I wanted that to have, quote unquote, that importance. And these are patterns in me. So if I wanted to do a workout, it's better if it's teamwork for me, right? So it's better to not, because when I work out alone, it's boring. It's like not exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just doesn't have that. So I recognize that I do love doing these things with other people and understanding there's a great young man that I have a chance to coach. Part of it is like understanding he hated studying until he did it with all his friends. And his parents kind of forced him to study alone. And it was, okay, well, let's try something different. And then all of a sudden he loved doing it. And they all learned together faster, right? So it's again, us being more aware of what they need. Us being aware of where they shine. Us being aware of like what they love to do. And understanding it's not our rules. It's not the way that we used to do things, or the way our parents forced us to do things. It's better for them if they learn this way. They learn it so much faster.
Yes, absolutely agree. And remember that our kids need their worth.
Yeah.
They need to feel significant in this world. That's one of the things that that's why they want to score the goals. They want to score the goals. But as soon as the coach started giving them more praise and attention for scanning the field and using teamwork, and the less praise they got for the goal, all of a sudden they found out their worth was in teamwork. Their worth wasn't in scoring the goals. And what are we doing that? How are we doing that as parents? How are we giving the worth into their strengths, into what they're doing versus what they're not doing?
Right.
And we are role models for them, guys. We are the role models for them. And one of the things that I love, which sometimes bites me in the butt, is that, I've always told my kids, when it comes to like grades and stuff, compared to what? And so, and encouraging them that it's not about the number of grade and what those grades mean to me. It means that you just didn't get it. And that's okay. We
Mhm.
want to help you get it then. And the other day, my son brought a paper and I was like, that's interesting. That's an interesting grade. I mean, a 72, that's an interesting grade. He's like, well, at least it's better than a 71 or a 70.
Talk about teaching resilience, right?
Right. Right. And he sees it it could have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know what? All I could do is like, you know what? And we need to celebrate. That's my next word is like, you're right. And we need to celebrate that 72, that it was not. So he already finds reasons to celebrate. That's
Right.
my whole, you know, example of this is how are you teaching your kids to find a reason to celebrate? That is really how we're going to give them their worth
And the
because
first thing is that we have to celebrate first.
yeah,
We're the harshest critics of ourselves, right? And that's taught through school, our parents, and we just come with a hammer. And even in the workplace, we teach this a lot. In the workplace, we are just beating the living poop out of ourselves, right? If you're a business owner, or if you're like, a manager, or even if you're a teammate, we are the worst critics. So anything else that anybody piles on top of us, that's just, it's more, but we've already beaten the heck out of ourselves. And to be able to because when you fall into that trap, you just continue the cycle of you don't learn as fast when you're beating yourself up. You don't react as well. You don't make good decisions. To be in that emotional state is a terrible one to be in. So we have to give them permission to do it. And they need to set, and like a lot of the chatters have said this, we need to be the standard. It's like if they celebrate, even if it's like, hey, that's great, and next time let's do even better. So they're in a great place. Oh yeah, let's do better next time. I want to learn more. And it's not like pain anymore. It's not suffering. It's so weird for some people to accept that, and you might need to try it because it works.
so true, so true. So I'm curious about this, Felix. Being that you're a CEO, you're a business owner, you help people to create businesses and flourish.
Yeah.
My idea or hallucination about a business that I've seen grow and that are multi-figure businesses, they always have team meetings. They always are looking at what are our wins? What are we celebrating? What do we need to do to reach our next goal?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that if we look at our family as a structure,
Yes.
the same way we look at the structure of a business, and we're doing those weekly meetings, and we're giving our kids that moment to shine and to
Mm-hmm.
have a voice, what is that teaching them going forward, right? Because what we teach them now becomes, I always say, this is their boot camp for the
Yeah.
real world out there, right? So if we're already teaching them to focus like once a week, like what are we focusing on? Like what are the wins? What did we accomplish this week? What was the old business that we were talking about last week? How are we celebrating that we completed it? And then what's our new business? And what do you want for this week? And what are we going to celebrate next week for you? Would you say that's true and that's how these businesses thrive?
Yeah, it's so a lot of companies use the agile process, which is what's called they're like weekly sprints, and so it's a weekly sprint with a measurement at the end. And what are we going to look to accomplish during this week? And every one of us can do this. I know people that are listening. Some of you are in these companies that are doing agile methodology, and you can do the same thing with our families, right? What do we want to feel this week? How are we going to support each other? What are our wins? And at the end of the week, I know you do this as well. It's just, how did we win this week? It's like, what can we be proud of ourselves for who we were, right? And like, even if something didn't work out, who we showed up as, even when that didn't work out. And we celebrate all the wins. And then we want to learn from what didn't work out. And so like, hey, what do we need help with? And
Right.
it's funny because it's the things that we do as CEOs, and now we just sometimes we'll forget to do them with our own family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to start there because we like any work that we do out there, we come back home and if our relationships are struggling with our spouses, with our kids, it's just going to magnify in all the work that we do. And so
Absolutely.
there are so many gifts that I think of you. There's so many gifts that we have in our workspace that like it would actually work at home if we just go, oh, hey, maybe I should try some new things. Maybe, but more importantly, I need to shed all the things that haven't like that were imposed upon me, and I'm just running unconsciously. I need to let those go.
Right. And one of our mentors, Tony Robbins, he says success leaves clues.
Yeah.
And so if you're successful at work or you're successful in your relationship, what is it that makes you successful and how can you duplicate that with your kids? One of the things that I wanted to bring light to also going back to finding our kids gifts is give your kids new opportunities. Give them opportunities to do new things, to try on new things, to see like maybe they're going to surprise themselves even, right? And it's so like yesterday, we were waiting for Sage to get done with her cheerleading. And so we just went to, we don't have Del Taco. So we went to Taco Bell. And
Oh,
I know,
oh.
I suffer.
If you know how much she loves Del Taco.
I do. Before we went in, I pre-framed Sam and I said, today you're going to order and here's my card and you're going to pay for it. And I said, do you have any questions about that? He's like, well, so what am I going to say? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you what I want. I'm going to tell you what your sister wants. You know what you want. And they're going to say, can I take your order? And then you're going to tell them. And then they're going to say, okay, pay. And then you'll pay. He's like, oh gosh. Okay. I said, you got this. And I could see that he was little bit of anxiety, I guess, just scared. Like, what am I going to do? And I said, you got this. And I said, it's just like your firewalk. You got this. Mm-hmm. So he went in there and like, as soon as I said that firewalk, right? Like he just straightened up, his identity changed. And he was like, okay, so we're going to take this. And then we paid. And afterwards he gave me a credit card. He's like, there you go. And I said, yep, there I go. And he was so proud of himself. So when my husband called yesterday and he was talking about their day, he was like, Dad, guess what I got to do? He was so excited that he got to take an order. Now, for us parents, it seems monotonous. Like we have to take orders all the time. But for him, it was a whole new opportunity for him to express his leadership, that he got to order for the entire family and pay. And so he was so excited about that. So anyhow, I just wanted to say, just add that, what are we giving our kids to try out that's new?
Right.
And, so we can find out even more gifts. But we only have 2 minutes left. So, Felix, I want to just open the floor to you to, kind of close us out and give us some golden nuggets.
So just to close out the story with my brother, for 10 years, about 10 years, he was really lost. And then he remembered he had this dream. This dream was always to become a police officer. And he went to the Sheriff's Academy here in Los Angeles. And he finished at the top of his class. So my brother's smart, crazy athletic. I mean, all these things all these gifts started coming back. And so he, if the sheriff's deputies in LA, they start in the jails. He actually stayed there longer in the jail than he needed to, just so he could continue to build his understanding of people. Ended up, now he's in a job that very few people get to do. So my brother is a use of force instructor. His job is to keep the deputies alive, making sure that nobody can get to their weapons, making sure that they use force properly and escalate properly so they can come home to their families when they get home. There is not one sheriff's deputy that doesn't know who my brother is. Mm. So here's the thing. We are not weak. Your kids are not weak. They're strong. They're unbelievably strong. And don't ever think that they're fragile. We just have no idea what they're going through. We have no idea what's happening at school, what's happening in other areas of their life that they may not be talking about. But just know they have this champion in them. There is not one person he's achieved his dreams. I wish he had been able to do it faster, for sure. That's our job. Our job is to help them remember that resilience, recognize their superhero powers, encourage them. Be that parent. Be the parent that you always wanted to have, not be the parent that we were taught to be because of other people, hammered us for other reasons. Yeah. So thank you, Vina. This is, if there's anything that I can do to help you and your mission, and anybody else out there, that's what we're here for.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Felix, for being here. And for those listeners that are parents, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but do something instead of doing nothing, and start helping your kids find, see their own greatness by empowering them. Find the gift, even if it's in something they don't like to do. Help them realize what the gift is in that. And because you just said something, Felix, that landed with me. And you said, and he stayed longer in the prison, as, in the jail, so he could get to understand people better. So maybe taking a lowest job or a lowest opportunity, like even at the school in their class play or whatever, what do they get to learn in that moment? What do they get to observe? Because those are the traits that they're going to carry on throughout life to be the leader that they are. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Felix, for being here and giving us all your greatness. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.